بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له الملك الحق المبين، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله سيد ولد آدم أجمعين، وصلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه الطيبين الطاهرين على مر الأيام والليالي والشهور والسنين. أما بعد. As we continue in the new lesson, this great, tremendous, beneficial treatise by the great Imam Abu Abdullah Muhammad ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani, rahimahullah, al-Mulaqab al-Malik al-Saghir, with the kunya, the little Imam Malik, who died 386 after the migration of our Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. After we concluded the affair pertaining, I forgot to say the date. Today now is currently, what is it? As far as the Gregorian calendar, everyone. It's the 1st of August, the 31st of July. This day or this evening of Yom al-Khamis or Laylat al-Khamis, Thursday, was the 31st of July, 2025 of the Gregorian calendar, which agrees with the current date, Islamic date, the date of Ahlul Islam, of us, inshallah, bi'idhnillah. It was currently the 6th of Safar, the year 1447, after the migration of our Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam. In this lesson of the great Imam Abu Abdullah Muhammad ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani, rahimahullah, the one who died 386, 386 بعد هجرة المصطفى عليه الصلاة والسلام. We were discussing the matters of Iman, and we finished it, and now we moved in the chapter pertaining to the different ideologies of what opposes that. And from them, as we discussed on numerous occasions, affairs pertaining to the major sinners, or affairs that nullify one's Islam, or affairs you'll find is connected with the three matters that we discussed last class, which was, as we said, takfir, tabdi', and tafsiq. Tabdi', takfir, or takfir, tabdi' or tafsiq. The matters pertaining to declaring one to be out the fold of Islam, when one is considered an unbeliever, disbeliever, or kafir. And the criteria that's pertaining to that, which Ahl al-Ilm mentioned. You'll find that walillahi alhamd minna, from the perfect decorum and system of our religion, how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bestowed His ni'mah upon us, where we have order. We have a criteria in every affair. No matter if it's an affair in which one is on the phone, or an affair in which a person has in regards to the matters pertaining to when a person is in the fold of Islam or outside the fold of Islam. Walillahi alhamd, you'll find that this religion, by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's infinite mercy and complete knowledge, has not entrusted us with these matters without any type of decorum or system for that matter. Rather, it is a matter in which also revolves around the Kitab and Sunnah, in light of the different usul and principles that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has allowed the scholars of our religion also to come with, extrapolated from the Kitab and Sunnah. So these matters have not been entrusted to us. You'll find that those who are ignorant of these principles, they're the ones that are living in a state of chaos, where these matters are still the fitna of today. In the countries that the great fitan, or the trials that are taking place within the Muslim lands, you'll find that the non-Muslims are working diligently to overthrow the rulers. and that you'll find that they're funding the terrorist organizations in order to accomplish this mission. Because ultimately, the non-Muslims want to destroy the religion of Islam, and they want to take over their lands in order to benefit from their resources. Because at the end of the day, it's about money. It's about rich, greed, wealth, and money. So based upon that, as we mentioned, everyone, those are affairs that we have to be very attentive of to know the plot of our enemies and know not to fall for their trap. How one does that, they need to enlighten themselves with ilm, proper knowledge, and sitting in the correct circles in order to attain proper education and proper enlightenment. So we mentioned the affairs of which the great Imam Ibn Abi Zayd al-Qayrawani, rahimahullah. For example, we discussed the matter as it says in the chapter, with the heading, if everyone looks in their books, it says Hukmu Martakibi al-Kabira, the ruling in regards to the one who commits major sins. Just to immediately start on where we stopped at, everyone, we talked about the matters, for example, number one, that a person that falls into committing a forbidden act, what's known, it's forbidden from the religion by extreme necessity, as we said. We talked about the categories. For example, what was the first one we mentioned last class? The one who's jahil, the one who's ignorant. As we know, the one that jahil, al-jahilu, bima huwa ma'lum fardiyatuh, wujubuh min ad-din bid-darura. We talked about this last class. Number one was the one who's ignorant. So you'll find this criteria has been clearly written within our religion. We talked about the matters pertaining to one who has jahl. So that's the first category, as we said, al-qism al-awwal. So if you want to say, generally, before we talked about the topics, just to reiterate a little bit, give more light in this matter, based upon what we mentioned. It says, for example, the great Imam Abee, rahimahullah rahmatu wasi'ah, نسأل الله أن يتغمده بواسع رحمته ومغفرته ويدخله فسيح جناته. You'll find that he says, Ameen. So you'll find that he mentions, it says, أن الناس أعني ما يرتكب محرما معلوما تحريمه من الدين بالضرورة أن ينكر فرضا معلوما وجوبه من الدين بالضرورة أربعة أقسام. So that the people, those who commit forbidden acts, or statements rather, or forbidden acts and statements, that its forbiddance is known of the religion by extreme necessity. That's not the first category. That you'll find that they deny a mandatory act or something mandatory, where its obligation is known from the religion by extreme necessity. So we said that it breaks down to four categories, as we mentioned last class. The first category, everyone, is al-jahil, the one who's ignorant. Who is ignorant of the one or an affair in which its obligation, is everybody okay? Its obligation is known of the religion from extreme necessity. So, we talked about this first category last class. We said ignorance does have its place in Islam where people can be excused due to it. There's more criteria that if we have more time to now touch on more details in regards to this, it's a little bit more in depth. But however, we're trying to keep it simple due to the fact that this is a beginner's book. But it's just to let one know that one can be excused due to ignorance and they commit an act that you'll find that mandatory affair, which its obligation is known of the religion by extreme necessity, that one can be pardoned. If they're what everyone? Ignorant, if they're jahil. So that's the first category. The second we mentioned last class, the one who rejects it, yajhad, as we said. They reject a duty, which is obligation is known from the religion by extreme necessity. The one who rejects or denies a fard meaning an obligation, or something mandatory, which is obligation is known of the religion by extreme necessity. By extreme necessity. So the one who denies that, we'll talk about that also in a minute, but we gave examples of this. Like, for example, the one who denies the salat as an obligation. We know that the person that rejects that obligation is what? It's left the fold of Islam. If they say that it's not a mandatory act, it's not an obligation, I don't believe that, then we talked about the criteria of establishing those matters of clarification to that person who rejects it, which we'll talk about in a minute. But generally, the hukum is generally, without now speaking about someone specific, that the one who rejects that mandatory act generally has left the fold of Islam, as we mentioned. Because we mentioned these last, because we got to mention this quickly, because we said this last class. The third affair is the one who makes something halal, as we said. The one who makes it lawful. They legalize it. Something forbidden that is known with the people of Islam is forbidden from the religion by extreme necessity. ما يستحل محرما معلوما عند أهل الإسلام تحريمه من الدين بالضرورة. The one who declares a matter to be lawful, it's forbidden, so that forbidden act or statement, which is known with the people of Islam, it's forbidden from the religion by extreme necessity, as we said last class. The fourth is what, everyone? What did we say last class? ما يركب محرما علم تحريمه من الدين بالضرورة. The one who commits a forbidden act, its forbidden is known of the religion by extreme necessity. So they commit an act, they do it. They do an act which is forbidden. Its forbidden is known of the religion by extreme necessity. So that's what we mentioned last class. So what we mentioned in addition to that last class, we said, ووجدوا أن نذكرها هنا قواعد ذكرها الأئمة من أهل السنة. Or we could say, ويجدر أن نذكرها هنا قواعد ذكرها الأئمة من أهل السنة. So now it's deserving that we mention the principles. The proper scholars of our religion from Ahl Sunnah mentioned concerning these matters. So you'll find that now comes the details of these matters. The details come. So we mentioned it said the first qa'idah in regards to this matter is al-farq, distinguishing between the statement and the one saying it, or the act and the one doing it, as we said this last class. And this is important. So we can mention it saying that a statement is a statement of what? Kufr. But not in all cases it necessitate that the person who said it is a what? Is a kafir. Or fasiq. Or mubtadi'. Or fasiq means a sinner. Mubtadi' meaning an innovator. So a person can say a statement of kufr, or say a statement that necessitates sin, or say a statement that necessitates also what? Tabdi'. And similar to that, an act. The person could do an act of what? Kufr. They also could do an act that necessitates what? That they're an innovator. And they could do an act that also necessitates that are what? A sinner. So, the general hukum for those affairs, we have to distinguish between the what? The statement and the one who's what? Saying it. And the what? And the act and the one who's what? Doing it. Those affairs one has to be very attentive of. They have to be very attentive of these matters. So that's the first qa'idah, the first principle. Distinguishing between, again, everyone, the statement and the one saying it. And the act and the one doing it. So those are the matters, as we said. That's the first qa'idah, and the examples will come. The second we mentioned last class is what? Distinguishing, or as they say, الفرق في الحكم بين العموم والتخصيص. وإن شئت فقل بين العموم والتعيين. والعموم يستدل عليه بدلالة الشرع فيقولون على سبيل المثال من ذبح لغير الله فهو مشرك كافر لأن الشرع دل على أن هذا شرك. ويقولون القاذف فاسق لدلالة الشرع على أن القذف فسق وهكذا. So the second principle, and this puts emphasis and it explains the first thing or the first matter. Distinguishing in the ruling between the general ruling and specification. Is it clear, everyone? Between the general ruling and specification. The generality in which you'll find that is used as an evidence upon this affair is by what comes in Kitab al-Sunnah. Example, a person you'll find in books in which we've read, in which we study, whoever slaughters for other than Allah is a what? Mushrik kafir. Whoever slaughters for other than Allah or in the name of other than Allah, then he's a what? Polytheist, disbeliever. That you read in a book is considered what, everyone? A general ruling. But that's not specification. The specification we'll speak about in a moment. But those are the type of rulings you'll find all throughout Kitab and Sunnah. Whoever prays for other than Allah is a what? Kafir. Whoever fasts for other than Allah or do any act of worship to draw close to that thing or that idol other than Allah has left the fold of Islam. Those type of matters, as we said, are what are they classified as, everyone? General what? General rulings. Considered general rulings. Does that now allow you or justify for you to take that ruling and now apply it to someone specifically? That's another affair. That's a whole nother criteria that we will mention in detail within a moment. So that's the qa'idah, that's the principle that we're mentioning now, the generality of affairs or rulings that you'll find in Kitab and Sunnah. Because you'll find that the shara' or the legislative affairs of Kitab and Sunnah indicates that the person that says that statement, for example, or does that act, has committed shirk, polytheism, generally. Or, for example, of what we'll find that the person who accuses someone of zina without proper evidence is called a qadhif. As we know, generally that a person that does that is a what? Fasiq. But a person that commits zina is a what? Fasiq. The one who lies is a fasiq. The one who steals is a fasiq. The one who backbites is a fasiq. The one who indulges in fraudulent transactions to deceive people and steal their money and eat the money of the people in falsehood is a fasiq. وَهَلُمَ جَرًّا, and so on and so forth. All those matters you'll find generally in Kitab al-Sunnah, that's a what? General ruling. It's a general ruling. So, those type of matters, these are the principles one has to what? Realize. Distinguish between the general ruling and specification, meaning applying it to someone specifically. That's the distinction that one has to now realize and know for sure before you fall to takfir. Because you'll find that the shaitan is inclined towards jahl being widespread, ignorance, until people fall into these matters where they declare Muslims to be outside the fold of Islam due to the fact that they do not understand these principles properly or at all, or they've never been taught. So that's the first thing. So again, let's repeat quickly. Generally, the qa'idah, the difference between the statement and the one doing it, and the act and the one doing it. And to make the distinction between the general ruling and the specification, or when we say specification, meaning applying it to someone specifically, applying it to an individual specifically. That affair we're going to explain within a minute. Right, so that's something that we have to, like we mentioned, give as far as in details. We'll give some more, it's going to come, inshallah. So, inshallah, that's clear. So, the second affair now revolves around applying these affairs to someone specifically. What they call انطباق الوصف على ذلكم المعين الذي كانت مخالفته كفرية أو بدعية or fisqiyah. Now, to apply these descriptions upon someone specifically, in which his opposition either necessitates kufr, bid'ah, or fisq. So now we're going to speak about the criteria that necessitates that we apply these affairs to an individual specifically. So that's now something we will now discuss. So these type of affairs, you'll find that Ahl Ilm on so many occasions they mention that when now you're going to apply these rulings, when you specify it or apply it to someone specifically, you have to now fulfill what they call istifa al-shurut, wantifa'u al-mawani', fulfilling the obligations or the conditions and removing the barriers that protect them from going outside the fold of Islam. So you'll find that they either mention, they say, istifa al-shurut, or you'll find what they call it, the affairs pertaining to al-shurut, التي لا بد من الاتيان بها or تطبيقها. So the first we just say that we have to fulfill the conditions of takfir, or fulfill the conditions of tabdi', or fulfill the conditions of tafsiq. There has to be conditions fulfilled. I'll say it again. Conditions have to be fulfilled for takfir, conditions have to be fulfilled for tabdi', and conditions have to be fulfilled for tafsiq. Takfir meaning the conditions that a person will have to be established upon them in order to declare them out the fold of Islam, or conditions being fulfilled in order to declare them a mubtadi', an innovator, or conditions being fulfilled in order to consider them or believe for them, or for them to be what? A sinner. What are those type of affairs? Just to enlighten ourselves briefly, because like we said, this has a lot of details where there have to be a separate lecture for this if we have some more time. But we'll touch on a little bit of these details now. So the first thing, that in order for the conditions of takfir, tabdi' and tafsiq to be fulfilled, number one is a taklif, meaning the affairs that makes a matter an obligation upon one, which is, for example, reaching the age of bulugh, meaning reaching the age of puberty, bulugh, and at the same time al-aql, them being in a state of sanity. So when a person is a child, the affair of taklif, where the duty now is an obligation, is what, everyone? Is raised. Or them being insane, al-aql. So a person that does not have al-aql or sanity, then that's also something that qualifies, or as an affair that has to be fulfilled for one of those three categories to be applied. So the first thing that's examined for a person when they now declare to be an unbeliever, or they fall into something of an act or statement that necessitates them being removed outside the fold of Islam, is number one, as we look at, number one is what? What is it? To see if they reach the age of bulugh, of adolescence or puberty. They reach the age of bulugh, the state of adolescence or puberty. And at the same time, we see if they are in their right state of what? Mind, meaning they have sanity. They have an aql, understanding, proper understanding, and they're in their right state of mind. So aql also is from those affairs that's examined in regards to these matters of takfir, tabdi' and tafsiq. So that's the first matter. The second, you'll find that they say that also is to be examined is ilm. Al-ilm. Bima tujibuhu mukhalafatuh. Is the person knowledgeable of what necessitates that opposition or that error they fell into? Do they have knowledge of the matter? Do they know? Do they know? Do they have the ilm? So that type of affair will excuse them. So those are matters you'll find as from the criterion that has to be fulfilled in declaring someone to be either what? Kafir or mubtadi' or fasiq. Another matter you'll find that they say that removes one from, or those type of excuses that are utilized as far as in fulfilling these conditions, what they call istifa al-shurut, is al-ikhtiyar. Did that person do it on their own accord? Meaning they weren't forced. They do it from their own choice and from their own accord. And they were not forced. What they call إكراه. الاختيار وهذا يخرج ماذا؟ الإكراه. They did it by choice. No one forced them. And that removes the affair of what they call compulsion or being forced. الرابع, from those conditions is a tadakkur, meaning they do a forbidden act dhakiran. They do it in a state where they remember. They know what they're doing and they remember it clearly. Dhakiran. The fifth is what they call al-amd. Al-amd meaning they did it intentionally or on purpose. They did it intentionally or on purpose. What they call al-amd. Al-amd meaning they did it biqasd, intentionally. They did it intentionally and on purpose. Al-amd. So those are from the conditions of fulfillment of the affairs of takfir, tabdi' and tafsiq. And like we said, the criteria is a little bit more in detail, but that's just some of the conditions. In order for that affair to be, or that hukum, the ruling to be applied on someone specifically, which could necessitate him being a kafir, or what? Mubtadi', or what? Fasiq. Then they also look to the affair of what they call intifa al-mawani', removing the mani'. Mani' meaning something that will prevent them from leaving the fold of Islam, or prevent them from leaving outside the fold of Sunnah, or something that will prevent them from leaving outside the fold of what you not say the fold rather, but outside of obedience. Outside of obedience until they enter into the realm of fisq, until they enter into the realm of sin. That is the second criteria. So generally, if we go back to the first, we say number one for takfir, tabdi' and tafsiq is what they call istifa al-shurut. So the conditions have to be fulfilled. Then the second affair is what they call intifa'u al-mawani'. Intifa'u al-mawani'. Removing the mani'. And the plural of mani' is mawani'. Mani' is like what prevents them. If we want to say, lifting the barriers or raising the barriers that prevent them from leaving outside the fold of Islam. Or that keeps them in the fold of the Sunnah, where they're not considered a mubtadi', or which keeps them in the affair of obedience, where they're not removed till they are now considered a what? Fasiq. So you have that criteria of fulfillment of the conditions. Now you have the second that you have to examine, which is removing the barriers, or what prevents them from exiting outside of these matters. From them, you'll find that the ulama mentioned is saying that they examine the environment they're in. They examine the environment that they're in. That the environment that they're in is closely studied. For example, are they in a country where there are ulama as-su or wujud ulama as-su? They're in an environment where there's an abundance of evil, deceitful scholars that are not from the Sunnah, but there are evil scholars that are propagating misguidance to the point where it's overrided the proper knowledge and the proper affairs in which the people are guided by. So you'll find that the ulama as-su, the existence of evil so-called scholars, they are taking consideration in the lands where it's running abundant affairs of kufr. And they closely study it, such as the matters that we said pertaining to the Muslim lands. For example, let's just say Egypt. Egypt, we know the majority of those who are in those lands have adopted the creed of the Ash'ariyah. They have Ash'ariyah. We know Ash'ariyah and their beliefs has a lot of affairs that necessitate kufr, generally. For example, the person that believes Allah is everywhere, that in itself is a statement of disbelief. It is. And the one who believes it also will necessitate their kafir, absolutely. However, now we're applying that on someone specifically. You'll find that the criteria that one applies is what we're mentioning here now. To say that no, we don't quick to now just say that these people are outside the fold of Islam due to the fact that there are evil scholars running abundant in that land that are deceiving the Muslims, which is considered a mani'. A mani'. It's considered a barrier that comes in between us and declaring them to be what, everyone? Outside the fold of Islam. So those are the matters one has to examine, that the ulama, they look at the environment of which one is in. And these are the excuses that could be made. So one does now go to Egypt and then they leave off the plane and they'll say, for example, out of blatant ignorance, because they don't come to these type of classes, oh, look at these kuffar here. Yahi, all these kuffar here, all these people, yeah, all of them Ash'ari, all of them kuffar. Does that make any sense? Yeah, all Ash'ari, all these people Ash'ari, all kuffar. Yahi, all of them kuffar. So those type of matters, one has to realize that the fulfillment of the conditions, then the other side comes was removing the barriers, the mawani'. From them, like we said, is the existence of evil scholars running rampant within the land that has deceived the people, until you'll find that their type of ideologies overrides the belief of Ahl Sunnah, and they've been deceived by them. You'll find that they will come to them saying statements of kufr, such as so-and-so that goes around the grave, oh, don't listen to those Wahhabis, listen to us. We're your scholars, and we know that the natural inclination of human beings, when a person is considered a scholar of the religion of Islam, they trust them. And nobody's never enlightened them to tell them to make a distinction, to say that these people are actually people of evil. So, based upon that, they say, okay, scholars, we trust you. So, you now approach one and they say, no, don't listen to those Wahhabis. What you're doing now by making circumambulation around this grave right here, that's tawheed. That's monotheism. What those Wahhabis call to is shirk. Don't listen to them. This in actuality is considered tawheed of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Those type of scholars, so-called, are running rampant around the land, such as like we just mentioned. Based upon that, as we mentioned, everyone, that type of shubha, which is another matter you'll find, it's also from the mawani'. Number one is the existence of evil scholars. Number two, a shubha, a doubtful matter, or if you want to call it, an ambiguity that has also been placed in their minds and in their aqidah, which also prevents them from being outside the fold of Islam. So, wujud ulama as-su', then wujud al-shubha, the existence of so-called evil scholars, and also doubtful matters that's been widely propagated and spread amongst the Muslims until it's the dominant factor over considered the true proper knowledge of Tawheed and Sunnah. Those are the matters that are also taken consideration before you'll find that the ulama declare for someone to be either what? Kafir, mubtadi', and the other affair of fisk we'll talk about in a minute. So that's from the affairs of the mawani' that has to be raised. Also from those affairs of what's considered a mani', what's considered a barrier that can be raised, is where the type of land they're in. The land, whether it be in a land or an environment, was very far. It's very, very what? Far away from knowledge of his people, or the proper knowledge of his people. Being far in that instant, where they're not in an environment where Islam is teaching them, enlightening them, and educating them properly, with the proper education, the proper creed, and the proper type of cultivation. So them being in those lands, in those environments, you'll find that the ulama, like we said, and those who have proper insight, examine these affairs and scrutinize them in order to establish the proof whether or not that person is deserving of these type of ahkam that we mentioned. So based upon that, you're not going to find it in the book. These are from my notes. Just stay with me. Just listen. So those are the type of matters, everyone. Some of it is in the book, some of it is from my notes, and some of it is from me. Some stuff that I learned 25 years ago with the ulama. Fine. So those are the matters, as we mentioned, everyone, that one has to now examine and scrutinize in order for in order for a person to be upon proper guidance in regards to these matters, because they're of the utmost importance, especially in these days and times where all types of ambiguities and doubtful matters and chaos is widespread. And people of mischief and corruption are wanting or run amok. You good. You want to go call? Hold on. Go ahead. Like, so these are the criteria that one has to explain when they now want to declare someone to be outside the fold of Islam. So we said that the methodology is what they call that من استيفاء الشروط وانتفاء الموانع. So one has to bring the conditions. We mentioned some of them, such as al-bulugh wal-aql, such as one being in a state of adolescence, so they reach the stage of adolescence, and having sound mind or sanity or proper understanding. And we also said from those conditions is ilm, as we said, one having knowledge of whether or not that matter is forbidden, or that statement is forbidden in Islam. And we know the opposite of it is what? Jahl, that a person could be jahil. Then those are some of the conditions, as we said. Then you have what they call the criteria of intifa al-mawani', removing the barriers that protects them from going outside the fold of Islam, due to the fact that there are, for example, wujud ulama as-su', that there are prevalent evil so-called scholars there, deceiving the Muslims by giving them and teaching them improper information, improper creed, and improper what? Affairs of Islam properly. Teaching them innovations and innovative practices, and worshiping of the dead, worshiping of graves, and all those matters. You'll find that those so-called evil scholars have come in those lands, taking advantage of the Muslims and leading them astray. Those type of matters, like we said, Ahl Ilm closely examine, they scrutinize, in order to not hasten towards declaring these Muslims out the fold of Islam due to what we mentioned. So keep in mind, if we want to say generally, فَلَا بُدْ مِنْ اسْتِفَاءِ الشُّرُوطِ وَانْتِفَاءِ الْمَوَانِعِ. So we have to fulfill the conditions, or fulfillment of the conditions, and removing the what? Mawani', removing the barriers, or the matters that prevent them from exiting out the fold of Islam, or exiting out the fold of the Sunnah until they become a mubtadi', or exiting out the realm of obedience until they're considered a sinner or fasiq. So you will find, for example, like the one, let's just say, generally the one that denies the obligation of the prayer. What do we examine? What do we scrutinize? Perhaps that individual just became Muslim a week ago, or a month ago, or 2 months ago. You'll find the great Imam Abee, he mentions this. He said, كالذي ينكر الصلاة لأنه أسلم حديثا ثم انقطع عن العلم ولم يعلم الصلاة أو كان في مكان نائٍ بعيدا عن أهل العلم وأهله فهذا يعرف الصلاة ويبين له وجوبها بالأدلة كذلك كل من أشبه حاله فإنه يعرف الفرض الذي أنكره سواء الصلاة والصيام والحج وهلم جرا. The person who denies the prayer, first, for example, they just recently embraced Islam. So that person in that particular instance is excused. He doesn't know. Then let's just say he embraced Islam and then he cut himself off from proper knowledge. So to the point he doesn't even know the prayer. Or the person that is in a remote place or a far place from knowledge and his people. In that instance here, do we say kafir? So in that instance, one will be brought in, and he's now made to know what the prayer is and clarify to him is what? His obligation by evidences and proofs from Kitab and Sunnah. By evidences and proofs from Kitab and Sunnah that the prayer, praying it 5 times a day, is an obligation. It's mandatory. So a person corrects them, redirects them, of course with kindness, softness, because he's ignorant. He's away from knowledge of his people. And in that instance, that person will be given that type of establishment of proof where he'll be clarified to him the obligation of the prayer and that person, somebody called me? I thought I saw somebody. That person is introduced to them the prayer and he's also taught its obligation. Anyone for that instance that resembles his state, same thing is applied, as we said. He's given the lesson or established clearly that this matter is an obligation, that's mandatory. Whether it be any affair that's from the pillars of the religion, whether it be the prayer, fasting, hajj, zakah, or what have you. If he answers, of course, surrendering and submitting to the advice, and now you'll find that he comes and carries out that mandatory act, this is what is being sought. So those are the type of matters that this is how you deal with a person that truly does not know these type of matters. Once the proof is established, and they know now, and they've been taught properly, then the affair of takfir or tabdi' or tafsiq applies. Then the affair of a person being outside the fold of Islam, or being a mubtadi' or innovator, or sin, those ahkam now are applied. After they are what? Educated, and they are properly what? Taught by establishing the proofs upon them. So they are educated properly, and then after that, like we said, then the matters of takfir is applied, or tabdi' or tafsiq. But that's after the proof has been what? Has been established. After it's been established. For example, another we can give, you'll find that there's certain religions, person might come and they just recently accept Islam. And you'll find within their type of way or their practices is legalizing marrying people within your family, your immediate family. Nikah al-maharim. Yastahil nikah al-maharim. For example, the paternal aunt or the maternal aunt or the wife of your father. Like we know from the religion of the Majus, that was a practice they were indulged in. That was a practice of theirs. أو مثلا من المشركة الأولى من العرب فإنه كانت من عاداتهم أنه إذا مات الأب احتوى ابنه زوجة أبيه فإن شاء أعضلها وإن شاء تزوجها يعني إن شاء منعها من الزواج على البتات بغيره وإن شاء تزوجها فيظن الأمر كما كان يعتقد فحكمه أن يعرف هذا المحرم ويبين له بالأدلة حتى يفهم ويعلم تحريم هذا الأمر وغيره مما هو معلوم تحريمه من الدين بالضرورة to the end of it. He said, for example, like the practices of the Majus, the Magians, or from the first polytheists, from the Arab, who also used to practice this, which is called Nikah al-Maharim, or what we know as what they say incest. Incest. And we know that from those other religions here in America, some of them still practice that. In certain denominations, within certain religions, they still do marry within their immediate families. Their immediate families. He said, for example, a person now just came to the fold of Islam, and that from their ways, let's just say, for example, the father died, and then from the ways of the Magians, of course, the father dies, and the son now acquires his wife, Zayd Abee. You know, he now acquires the wife of his father that passed away. You'll find that now the son could come, and if he wants, he can prevent her forever from not remarrying, if he wants. Or he can marry her himself. So he had that choice. So let's just say he embraced Islam and he's now indulging in this act. So he thinks that the affair is like what's in his mind at that particular moment or that particular time. What do we say? We say kafir? No. If that person just recently embraced Islam, then he is now educated. He is made to realize this matter is what everyone forbidden. It is clarified to him by evidences and proofs in order for him to understand and for him to attain proper knowledge of the forbiddance of this act and other than that, in which is an act which is considered ma'loom tahrimuhu min ad-din bid-darura. It's considered an act which is known its forbiddance from the religion by extreme necessity. Now you see why we say that word darura, extreme necessity, because one has to know this. You have to know it's not permissible for you to marry what? The wife of your father, or marry your brother, or marry your mother, your paternal aunt, or your maternal aunt. Those matters are extreme necessity. You have to have that knowledge. That's the reason why these words, the ulama know exactly what they mention when they say bid-darura, something you have to know of the religion by extreme necessity, because these type of affairs can cause or be a part of destroying society. These matters and indulging in it and these type of practices plays a major role in the destruction of society. It's considered mischief and corruption of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's earth. So that's the reason why these matters have to be taught and people have to be educated, and the Muslims have to attain knowledge of these matters. They have to. But the point of the matter, why we mention this again, is to educate, to let one know that we're not quick to establish the affair, to declare them or what everyone kafir, until the proof is established and it is clarified to him with evidences and sound proofs that this act is forbidden, and not to hasten towards immediately saying kafir, but to know that this matter has to be again established. So you'll find that we mentioned it said قد يسلم أناس من الكفار. Let's just say another example. A person would know a group of people from the unbelievers or the disbelievers. وهم يعتقدون مثلا أن الخمر حلال لأنهم كانوا يستحلونه في ملتهم قبل الإسلام مثلا، أو يستحلون الزنا ويعبرون عنها بالصداقة، وهذا ليس منكرا في ملتهم، فهؤلاء يجب على أهل الإسلام يعرفوهم تحريم هذا الأمر الذي ركبوه، فإن استجابوا وانقادوا فهو المطلوب، وإلا كانوا كفارا مرتدين. Another example we could give, that there might be a group of people from the unbelievers or disbelievers that became Muslim, and they have the belief that intoxicants is lawful. They have the belief that intoxicants are lawful. And they used to declare or legalize this matter before embracing Islam, meaning in their practices before. Or you'll find that they used to legalize fornication, or legalize adultery, or legalize prostitution. Let's just say, for example, in their way, or in their so-called practices. Or in these days and times, we could include in that mithaliya, what they call homosexuality or lesbianism, and the likes of that. And you'll find that they changed the name of it. They'll call it friendship, boyfriend, girlfriend, what have you. Sadaqa. Sadaqa means friendship. But that's what they'll utilize. They'll change the act and put another title on it in order to make it fair seeming, acceptable with the people. Even though the act is still what? Forbidden. He said you'll find that they don't declare forbidden or an evil within their practices before Islam. So in that instance, do we declare them to be kuffar? This is another example. We say that they are made to know that this act is forbidden by extreme necessity in which they're committing. Then you'll find that it says if they answer the call, alhamdulillah, and if they submit, that is what we're seeking. If that's not the case and they still reject and deny and they insist, then in that instance they're considered kuffar. Considered kuffar, apostates, if they reject after the proofs and evidences have been established. But that's the matter that we wanted to what? Clarify. Similar to that, what we said in the second category. So let's go back to the second one. So we mentioned the affair of a person that's ignorant, jahil. So you'll find that the ulama examine all these matters again. They scrutinize the environment. They also look at whether or not a person recently embraced Islam, or were they in a predicament where they were not made to be taught properly or educated properly. Similar to the masajid, you'll find that a lot of what is widespread, especially here in the West, their masajid are not teaching them proper Islam. They say Islam, but it's not being taught with the proper understanding, the proper creed, and the proper way to cultivate them. They say that causes what? You'll find that the people that are propagating the proper Islam, they say that that's causing division. Whereas the actual opposite, not being taught proper principles of the religion, that's what's causing division. But they think the opposite. They think that if you talk about Tawheed, Sunnah, that person is a mushrik, that person is mubtadi', that person is a sinner. Oh, those affairs, they make the people have hard hearts. That's the type of affairs that's taking place in a lot of masajid these days. So they're not being properly taught, they're not being properly cultivated, they're not being properly educated. Those affairs are looked upon, they're examined, in order to not hasten towards declaring a person to be a disbeliever or mubtadi' or fasiq. How many I've even had cases, people come to the masjid telling them, for example, woman is pregnant. This happened to me before. A woman was pregnant out of wedlock. They were boyfriend and girlfriend. They weren't married. This happened about 10 years ago. They both came in the masjid. This is not his wife. This is his girlfriend. Muslim. And you would think they would know. And really was talking to me when he had no recollection of what he's doing is forbidden. Right in front of me with his girlfriend pregnant, saying, can we marry each other? So me, as a person that now studies, this is the time to what? Apply it. Person that's not educated, what they'll say? Get out my masjid. What is wrong with you? That's not how you deal with it. The man truly does not, in his mind, any awareness what he's doing is what? It's wrong. So I had to now deal with it in a proper way. So he came in the masjid. He said that this is my girlfriend. This is my girl. We want to get married. She's pregnant. I think she's about 4 or 5 months at that time, something like that. So I said to her, I said, just let me speak to him in private. So then I sat with him, clarified to him, you know you're supposed to marry someone in Islam? No, I didn't really know. You know, that has to be your wife before you actually have intercourse and have a child. And I can't marry you off until she has the baby. Because the baby was now conceived out of something that was unlawful in the religion. So I can't marry you until she has the child. But here in this instance, due to the fact that you were ignorant, now if he was in a Muslim land, that will be a affair that will remove him from the had, from the prescribed punishment, if it reached the ruler. Because if the ruler, and he would now examine him. Did he do it based upon what? All the things we just discussed there. Did you know? Did you have knowledge? To the end of it. If now the affair of the had has been removed due to a shubha or some type of affair, what we just clarified, which is ignorance. So that will remove him from the what? Prescribed punishment if he was in the Muslim land and reached the ruler. However, I still cannot marry them. She still had to wait until she had the baby. And then after that, I said you have to separate because zina is haram in the religion of Islam. Fornication and premarital relationships are unlawful in the religion. And any type of intimacy unlawfully in our religion is also what? Forbidden. He truly said to me, he said, I had no idea. I really didn't know. I mean, it was clear. Anybody that comes in your masjid and clearly shows you that they does something unlawful with a woman and saying that this is my girlfriend right in front of me, clearly is in a state where he does not have a clue that he's doing something is haram. He doesn't have a clue. But this is to let you know how widespread ignorance is amongst the Muslims, that they have to be educated, and that their masajid that they're going to are not educating them to tell them that, Akhi, this is not proper. You have to have a proper relationship. You have to be married. You can't have children out of wedlock to the end of it. So those are the matters that we said. And if you want to apply it now, that prevented him from being in the state. Which one? First, second, or third? Which one? Kafir, mubtadi' or fasiq? Which one? Fasiq. Fasiq. Sinner. So that will be clarified to him, what we just said, and we educated him and taught him and clarified to him that this is the ruling in regards to religion. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made zina haram. You mentioned the ayah, وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا إِنَّهُ كَانَ فَاحِشَةً وَسَاءَ سَبِيلًا, to the end of it. وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا الزِّنَا, to the end of the ayah, which is a Surah Al-Isra. But anyway, that ayah and those ayahs, the likes of that, everyone, that person will sit with them, teach them, and that will prevent them from immediately declaring them to be a what? Fasiq. You understand, everyone? So those are the matters to give some type of example. We'll stop here, inshallah. Right, we'll continue next week. Oh, next week is the conferences and the classes. I would say the week after next. But don't forget, everyone, alhamdulillah, by the fadl of Allah, we have a lot of activities coming up next week, inshallah. So these matters, make sure that you try to now revise them, because I will test you on them. They will come, inshallah. Any questions about the lesson? هل من سؤال واستفسار؟ تفضل.
First four categories that you talked about, the one with the one with ignorant, the one who rejects and denies the power, and the one who
Those four categories are called, what we just mentioned. You mean generally, the heading for it? The person that commits, if you want to say, or says a statement that's forbidden, where it's forbidden is known of the religion by extreme necessity, if you want to say, or they deny it, obligatory act, and all those matters. They break down those four categories, all four. So that's what I just said. They fall under generally anybody that commits or says an act or forbidden act or commit a forbidden act. It's forbidden is known from the religion by extreme necessity, bid-darura, by extreme necessity, if you want to say it generally. Or they reject an obligation. That its obligation is known from the religion by extreme necessity. I mean, you have to know this. There's no denying it. You have to know the prayer is obligatory. You have to know that fast on Ramadan is obligatory. You have to know what tawheed is. There's no excuse. If the parents, you have children, you have to put them in classes that teach them what tawheed is and what polytheism is. There's no excuse. They have to know, or else they're going to now be a detriment to society instead of being someone that will be productive for society. They'll play a part in corrupting Allah's earth instead of being a part of what? Rectifying it. If they don't educate themselves, they're either going to be falling into polytheism, or they'll be falling into innovative practices, which is bid'ah, which is also from the affairs that are beloved to the shaitan, and also beloved to the devil, and which is worse than sin, which is bid'ah, or they'll fall into sin. So they have to sit constantly in proper circles so they can know these matters. Other than that, if they're not taught with proper teachers and proper education, a person that doesn't know, they are more liable and susceptible to what? Falling into it. What was the statement, Hudayfa? أعرفت الشر ليس لا للشر ولكن لتوقيه ومن لم يعرف الخير من الشر يقع فيه. He said, I didn't know evil just to know evil. However, to protect myself from falling into it. And whoever doesn't know good from evil, they're going to fall into it. They're going to fall into it. So try to make sure that one, but that's the heading anyway. Any other question? Any other question? Follow. We'll be here next Wednesday, inshallah. Next Wednesday is start a class, but it's not. The dodo start next Friday, but we'll have classes before that on Wednesday. Any other questions? تكتفي بهذا القدر وصلى الله وسلم وبارك على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.